friends and family. Welcome back to another episode of Car Stories with
Sung Kang
and Emelia Hartford. Today's guest, we have Rod Chong. Rod is the Chief Creative Officer over at the beloved race service and just an artiste, I would say.
Yeah, a well-evolved human being. So,
Yeah.
Right? He shares a lot of wisdom on his personal journey.
He's also had a very full career outside of motorsports, from also video games to music to fashion to a lot of cool things.
Yeah, it was just a really pleasant conversation with a person I've never met, but you've been friends with Rod for a while, right?
Yeah, I've known Rod for a very long time, and he is not afraid to ever go deep with the conversation, which I appreciate the openness and willingness to go there.
Yeah. All right, well, enjoy.
Rod Chong, everybody.
So for the listeners out there that aren't familiar with, your history and your work, can you give us a little, history of Rod and, where you are now and where you came from?
Yeah, well, I'm one of those kids that grew up racing go-karts. So, like I said, from an immigrant family in Vancouver, Canada. And I think a lot of people, I'm sure you find this from all the people that you talk to in the car world, that often a passion for cars tends to come from childhood. Usually, I find 9 times out of 10. So I'm no different from that. My father and his brothers were racing cars and go-karts. And my father had a shop where they would build custom car stereos, and they had giant subwoofers, and they'd enter them in competition. So I grew up racing. But interestingly, I never really liked the wheel-to-wheel sport that much. I was maybe this very shy, quiet Asian kid. And I liked drawing and painting cars more, like the creative aspect of being a kid that was into cars. I liked being a racing driver more so I could, have something to help with, being the experience of racism and all that stuff as an Asian kid in school. It gave me a little bit of a leg up, and I liked having my leather jacket I could wear and all that stuff. Maybe that's a Jamaican culture coming through. But fast forward on, went to art school with a plan to design cars because I was good at drawing and painting, and got distracted with cameras and running around with cameras. So it seemed way more fun. So that led to the first career. I've had about 5 careers. The first career was directing music videos. And so that I did that in my native Vancouver, then came to Los Angeles, and then ended up in London doing that. But it was a very tough career. And I did more underground industrial stuff. And that kind of fizzled out. I was living in London, and I heard about this video game that you could download all sorts of different cars, and you could change it and make your own cars for it in your own tracks. And this was an EA game called Sports Car GT, a PC simulation game. And I started downloading all these cars and tracks. It was really exciting. And because I'd already had a career in media, I put together a crew of people. We started making sports car mods for F1 games. So you would take an EA PC game and make it into a sports car game. And I love Le Mans and GT racing, so this is what we focused on. And one of our mods became very famous, and then suddenly we all got headhunted. And overnight, I was given a job designing and producing racing games. I turned that into a job at EA and went back to my native Canada because I figured out in my hometown they were making this very famous racing game, Need for Speed. Drifting was just coming up, becoming more popular, and Need for Speed was tapping into this. And this was about 2005 or so. Most Wanted had just come out, and I joined the team. And they put me in charge of the cultural elements that were going to be integrated into the games. Like, how does illegal street racing around the world, illegal drifting, all that stuff, how can you integrate that into a game? How can you make stories? What should the characters in the game should be wearing? What music should be there? What should the graphics look like? And they started sending me to LA to go to drifting events. And I started meeting people and getting more involved with the community, first in SoCal, even though I lived in Vancouver. And then the bosses said to me, hey, we want to make a website about car culture. And can you come up with something? So I went away, went on vacation in New Zealand, thought about it for a couple of weeks, and then came up with this idea of speed hunting or speed hunters, which became a website that we launched in 2008. And at the same time, we launched another program called Team Need for Speed, which was a drifting team. And we started building cars for SEMA. But we got to travel the world and go to all the different scenes around the world. And that was an incredible moment to go to Japan, Australia, New Zealand, all across Europe, all across the US, and see what people are doing and try and tell stories and maybe connect car scenes. And then I left that in 2014 and did a few other projects within racing games, sim racing, even some autonomous motorsports stuff with a company called RoboRace, and then joined the race service team about 5 years ago, moved to LA. And I had the dream of coming to SoCal to be a participant in the car scene here. People think I'm crazy, but I kind of moved to LA so I could drive cars. And I love big cities too, because there's a great creative scene here. That, as both of you know, there's people that are doing fashion, media, films, graphic design, whatever it is, art. But you can have that here, but still enjoy driving cars. And having lived in Stockholm and London, it's much harder to do that. There's great creative scenes, projects. You got a nice car in London, it's very hard to enjoy it.
Sure is, yeah. And so, even in Canada, because the weather's so bad, it's gonna rust out your cars.
Yeah, that's true.
All that salt, right?
Yeah.
So for the folks that don't know Race Service, because we had one of your colleagues here from Race Service, James.
Yeah.
Could you explain to the listening audience what you guys do over there at Race Service?
Well, Race Service, it's been interesting. Race Service has been around about 5 years or so. And for the first few years, people kept saying to us, what is Race Service? What do you guys do? It seems very cool, but what is this thing? The way that we explain it is that it's a creative agency. So we do different types of projects, collaborations with different brands, usually in automotive and motorsports, but we do work in video gaming. I do some projects in fashion as well. And our thesis is to connect the worlds of motorsports and automotive to wider parts of contemporary or pop culture, streetwear, music, video games, even some Web3 materials, fashion, and different organizations. Like we're an agency for NASCAR. We do a lot of projects with AMG and Porsche. Hot Wheels is one that I'm quite involved with. They'll come to us. Yeah. They'll come to us and they'll want us to do content and strategy, and sometimes events to connect all these worlds together. We're also in the middle of launching a streetwear fashion brand as well that's kind of focused around collaborations with automotive brands, but we have our own line as well. That's a bit of a new project. And then the last part of Race Service is that we are a car culture hub. We wanted to have a place that's a destination, and we have meetups once a month, the first Friday of every month at our space. We occasionally curate events, and we have a pretty active community of people that come out to our different programs on site. Yeah.
And can I invite anyone listening to go to a Rise and Shine sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what it's called, Rise and Shine.
Rise and Shine, yeah.
Yeah, it's coffee and cars.
First Friday of every month.
Yeah, and it's a good turnout. And maybe if you're not familiar with cars, you want to get in the space, you want to meet some cool people, I think it's a great environment.
So you know what I love about you guys over at Race Service is that, you know, a lot of times you meet, you know, car folks and they have no fashion sense. They look like they show up and like, because, you know, my wife always bags on me. He's like, you know, why don't you like dress up? And then everybody over at Race Service, you guys have a great blend of what is hip in fashion and pop culture. And then you meld that with, you know, car culture, which, you know, I got some swag from you guys and I took it over to my house and my wife is like, that's what you should be wearing. Right? Because it's a celebration of, you know, our love affair for cars and the community, but then it's you know, it's a wonderful blend.
Yeah.
You know, so
it blends into streetwear and fashion and style, but we're quite focused on curation. Whether we are designing an event, we'll think of every single aspect of what someone experiences going through that event, from the music to the posters and every little detail. And the same goes for any film project that we do. The worst sin at race service is to do a project that has no style, or to take a photograph that doesn't have visual aesthetic vibe to it. It's something that's very important to us. And I find that whole trajectory is interesting. When I first started going to automotive events, you go to an event, say a drifting event in LA, even 10 years ago, people had some style, you know?
10 years ago?
10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah?
And then I would go to an event in the UK and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, what are these people wearing? But the interesting thing is, in the past 10, 15 years, that's changed. That has really changed. And you see the intersection of streetwear and modified custom cars a lot more now, in that people's personal presentation is definitely linked, in a lot of scenes anyway, maybe not everywhere, to whatever custom car that they're building, or how they express their personal style through a custom car or a modified car.
And you guys do a lot of cool collabs and help companies bridge those gaps, right? One huge project that you've had lately has been Hot Wheels.
Yes.
How's that going?
What did you guys do with Hot Wheels?
Oh, I've been personally a collaborator of Hot Wheels for a long time. Through many different programs. From Speed Hunters had different collabs we did. When I was doing the Project Cars video game, we had a line of Hot Wheels that we collabed with them. But Hot Wheels has been a client and collaborator of Race Service since we started for the past 5 years. So we're involved with the Legends Car Show. We have produced numerous content programs with them that you see on their Instagram channel. Currently, we are doing a documentary series for a car that's being built for Rennsport Reunion. It's going to debut in about a week and a half. So we're always involved with all sorts of different programs with them. I'm a bit of a Hot Wheels collector. I love the brand. And those little cars, there's so much joy in each of them.
Yeah.
Well, you've done projects with them. I have your cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's like every car person's bucket list to have your car as a Hot Wheels.
Yeah.
Right? So cool, you know?
Yeah, for any automotive personality or car builder, I think that's definitely a big checklist item, right?
Yeah.
You've arrived.
Yeah.
If you have your Hot Wheels. Yeah.
You know, I'm sure you've seen a lot of people come and go, right? Trying to do what Race Service does. And I mean, what do you think that sets you guys apart from the ones that just last, you know, a few months? Like, well, to just be able to kind of help the listeners if, you know, they have interest in doing what you guys do.
Well, it's also a wider question of how do you take your passion for cars and make that into your career and then have that continue, which is not, for a lot of people, that's not easy. And that's a big question, right? I would say that it's a mix of being driven by passion. You know, if you really love cars, and whether you like filming cars or building cars, or you paint skins in a video game, whatever that thing is, taking that passion and having that fuel you is really good. That'll only get you so far, though, because I think that, you know, this concept of the 10,000 hours, right?
Yeah.
You have to be good at your craft.
Yeah.
You have to be good at
10,000 hours to be an expert.
Yeah. You just have to look at the craft of what you want to do. So if you take, you know, we look at the content creation side of what you do, Emelia, like that, there's a lot of craft to that. How do you shoot? How do you talk to the camera? How do you edit? How do you build a storyline? And all that takes a bit of focus. And I believe that people that do the groundwork to become very good at what they do, that's very important. And then lastly, it's being able to work on your personality so that you can talk about what you do. You can connect with people and find those opportunities. So for me, those are the magic three mixes of being super passionate about what you do, having the craft down, being able to do it very well, and look at all aspects of whatever discipline you have within a car career, if you want to call it that. And then, that last thing is the ability to talk, connect, and maybe even sell what you do. You work really hard so that when the spotlight swings your way, that you're ready and you don't fuck it up. We allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can swear.
You don't screw it up, then maybe it's going to fly.
Yeah. Luck is when hard work meets opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think, Emelia?
I lean more towards the latter, where I think you can achieve anything that you want to on this earth so long as you work for it and don't give up. I always think of this little image of this person who's like digging underground, trying to find the light or whatever it is. And most times people will give up before it just takes one more swing to get there.
Yeah.
Like in acting world, you may get 100 or 1,000 no's before you get one yes. And I think as long as you work towards anything, you're a good person, you can achieve, what you believe or you found excites you or what you set out to do.
But there's so many fucked up people that achieve success, right? Like,
but
especially in our
don't.
business, they go, that guy's in the fuck, or so and so is such an asshole. Like, and then
but I don't think they have longevity. Longevity, sorry. That's what I think.
What do you think?
I tend to focus on creatives, being a creative-minded person myself, and there's a category of creative. Me and my friends call them naturals, where they just do stuff. You may meet a film director sometimes, and they just don't seem to care, or a musician. They just do what they do, and they don't really spend a lot of time thinking about it. Some people would say that if you're too smart or you think too much, you might paralyze yourself thinking about all the possibilities. And if I do that, or should I have that strategy, and then that will lead to that. And sometimes if your brain isn't clogged up with all this stuff, you just do stuff and you go for it.
Yeah.
I think that also relates to your culture. I'm not American. I'm from Canada originally, and immigrant parents and all that whole thing. But one thing, having
from where they immigrated from?
My father is from Jamaica, Jamaican Chinese, and my mother's from Colombian, South American.
Oh, cool.
But one thing, having moved here 5 years ago, that I love about American culture is the can-do spirit, but also the way that people support each other in the communities. I think that's fantastic. If you say, I'm going to do this thing, and you have a good support network, people will generally say, from my experience anyway, okay, we're going to support you, go for it. We're going to help you. We're going to talk to that person, do that. Whereas in other cultures that may have tall poppy syndrome, if you say, I'm going to do this thing, and they're going to say, who do you think you are?
Tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah. It's like a field of poppies, and one tries to grow taller, the other poppies are going to try and gang up and cut that thing down.
Wait, really?
Get back in your place.
Do you think that fueled your, hunger or desire to prove everybody wrong because people are trying to cut that poppy off?
Yeah, there was definitely a level of rage, angry young man trying to do things. I would say because I'm a little older and you didn't have the internet as a place to have community, to show what you could do. I used to make these crazy videos, and I would finish them, put them on the tape, and put them in a drawer because it was before YouTube launched. So now the world is a lot flatter. So if you're from a smaller city or a different place, you can still show what you do. You put it on the internet, build fans, figure out how you're going to launch your career, create content, whatever it is. So things are very different now.
What I really envy about you, Emelia, is that you're driving the cars that you're building, right? Like you always show up here with like some cool car, and it's I get so frustrated with these cars that I have because the notion of like driving a vintage car, and it's like, it's cool. Like you feel like, yeah, I'm James Deaning in, Hollywood. And And then like an hour later, it starts to overheat, and then you're on the side of the road, man. Like I don't like that anymore. Like, you know, it was cool like for the first like 3 times that happened, but then always these old cars have some problem, right?
Yeah.
And you know, the gauges don't work. Like I think half the cars, the gas, the fuel gauge, I'm not sure if it's on empty or full because it's just going up and down.
That's a little bit the argument for the whole EV swap thing, right? If it takes out that, you can just enjoy the thing. It probably doesn't drive in the same way, but there's an argument for it where the thing runs.
Yeah, and you never have to worry about...
And it's probably 10 times as fast also. I don't know if that's really a factor.
When I build cars, I keep streetability in mind, like hardcore. Like I just bought a 69 Camaro and I already bought everything I need to put AC in it because I never, again, will I take out AC from a car, build a car without AC. There's just so many layers I wanted to be comfortable driving because I don't want to end up on the side of the road. And when I moved here with my 240SX that was constantly overheating, had to pull over with no AC, going to auditions with like my makeup running and sweat dripping down my back, smelling like gasoline because it was running rich. I think now I want to be able to enjoy the cars, and it makes me so sad if they park for too long that maybe it's my OCD a little bit, but I almost make them a little too perfect when half the time with what I'm doing, you know, content creation, a lot of the time people don't pay attention to the small details because you really don't need to. Yeah. But I think I obsess over it at times.
Yeah.
This is a challenge of classic car ownership, modified cars, but it kind of part and parcel with it. I've given up on dreaming of air conditioning in mine. I bought a fan off Amazon, but it just blows a little bit of air. Cools the sweat.
I've been thinking about liquidating all my cars and just focusing on one and like making that.
That's what I'm doing. Right? I just have one.
Because I love vintage cars, but like get that thing like completely sorted out where it has the AC, it has everything that I need, all the creature comforts where I can drive it like across country to New York and then drive it every day. Because I look at these cars and, you know, I'm getting older and I go, when am I going to actually enjoy this? When am I going to be able to drive it into canyons? When am I going to be able to take it to the track? Because I'm always paranoid, like it's going to break down. Yeah. Right. And I think I shifted to like, oh, I love the process of bringing these cars to life, but they're not really fully alive. They're kind of limping through.
Yeah, it's hard. Right? You like lose trust in a car sometimes too when it breaks down one too many times. Yeah. Like I've had cars catch fire before, and when I see smokes, like my initial reaction is panic, but you know that's where you have to go that extra step to make sure that something like that doesn't happen.
I've done something a little crazy with my car. I had a digital twin made.
Huh?
A digital twin.
Like an NFT?
I commissioned someone. No. It's an add-on for this PC simulation game, Assetto Corsa. So I had this guy in Europe build it. We scanned the car, and he built a 3D model of it, did all the physics and everything. So I can sit in my living room, because I'm into PC sim racing, with a VR headset. And I've driven the car across Tokyo, for example, at 200 miles an hour. In virtual reality.
You have your car on Assetto Corsa?
Yeah. And I've driven it on the LA Canyon. I mean, that's stupid because I could do that in real life because that's in LA. But still, it's funny that I can drive my car in my living room around racetracks around the world. That's a different way to enjoy it.
Assetto Corsa, for those listening, think of, not to compare to Gran Turismo or iRacing, but it's a racing video game essentially that Assetto Corsa specifically a lot of drifters like to use for the realism of being able to get a car sideways and get seat time without actually spending money on tires and gas. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah, there's a mod called Shitoko Revival, and this team has built all of Tokyo. You can drive from Haneda Airport to Yokohama, and on all the Wangan in multiplayer, in traffic. It's wild, in virtual reality.
Wow.
And it's one of the craziest things I've ever experienced, like being in a group of cars, like 1,000 horsepower GTRs and Skylines in groups. And then you can look across and you see another group of cars doing a run, going through the tunnels, coming past you. Yeah, it's one of the more interesting things. Anyway, that's a way that I enjoy my classic car virtually.
So it's much different than playing it in like Gran Turismo or something, or a car then. Because I have my car in Gran Turismo, and I think like
that's less street and more tracks.
30 minutes into it, I was like, yawn. Like boring. Like,
it's different in VR. If you have a full PC sim rig, you're able to trick your nervous system. It actually thinks you're driving.
Oh.
Yeah, it's very different than a TV.
I like that.
I'm curious about what makes you tick, I guess.
Oh.
And how you go into...
We're going to get into it. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's deep dive. What would you like to know?
Let's start with what makes you tick. What makes you choose the decisions that you do on a daily basis, and where are you hoping to go with your career?
It's an interesting question when you ask someone like, why are you here? What are you here to do? Or what do you stand for? I find that very fascinating whenever I meet people. I sometimes look in the mirror and think, what must I do? Not what do I want to do? What must I do in order to not go crazy? And for me, it comes down to two things. One is I exist to imagine things and bring those visions to life. Whatever it is, whatever that creative project is, that's a thing I must do. And if I'm not doing that, then there's sadness. I start going crazy. So that's a bit of the hardwiring. For my personal philosophy, I define it as I exist to grow and learn. And that for me is very important, to continuously be a student and to continuously try and look at where my blind spots are. It's kind of hard to do because they're blind spots, but try and keep learning. And never become too solid. Never say, okay, this is me. I'm not going to grow anymore. So that's the one of the main focus. Maybe that's my life philosophy. But the thing that I exist for, maybe my mission, which has maybe only come together in the past few years, is you can ask the question, how are you going to contribute to the world? What are you going to do? And for me, it comes down to trying to fight for a bit of equality, whether that's in the creative projects or the people that I'm giving opportunities to, or if I'm putting a creative team together. Who are those people? Can I try and hire some women in the automotive scene into the projects that I'm involved with? Can I try and give opportunities to people of color? Or if I see a young kid that's just starting, who comes from maybe a, lack of a better term, disadvantaged background, but they're really passionate, can I help them? Can I give them advice about how to develop their careers? So that's the main mission. I'm still working through the best ways to actualize that, but I'm trying to live by that and to affect change around me.
That's a great answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Very well thought out. And I know you take pride.
I think about these things a lot.
Yeah, I know. Have you had many mentors in your life?
Yes, I've had. I don't know where I figured that out. Somewhere along the line, I figured out that it's helpful to have people to learn from. And from the very beginning of my career, even when I was in art school, I would hang out with the teachers. I'd go for lunch with them. And I'd just try and learn. And wherever I went in the different stages of my career, I've always had people that were much further along than me who took an interest in what I was doing and gave me advice, sometimes might criticize me for the way I was going about things, and give support, maybe make some introductions. And I try and do that as well now when I'm going about my business. I'm having a bit of a strange year in that for the first time since I can remember, I have a little bit of spare time.
Really?
And I found that very disconcerting. For me, having a to-do list that's, crazy long, intense deadlines, that friction creates a sense of order. Maybe I became addicted to having that friction and just being busy. And now that just for the past 4 months, I'm coming off a 4-year project. I have a little bit of time to think about things and just to focus on myself. And for the first few months, that was kind of disturbing. I have to build internal motivation versus external motivation from a deadline, or just having people calling you, or having things that you have to get done, or a project on fire.
Is that not setting goals, though? Setting deadlines for yourself? Is that not a way of achieving?
Creating friction?
Sure. I mean, friction can be defined as many things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, anyone would say setting a goal is creating friction because you have to do something about it.
Yeah. I've been changing my methodology to be maybe more about having a way of approaching every day, which is more methodology based, or having things that I focus on, but less about saying we're going to have that done by then. I need to earn that amount of money by this point in time, or this has to be done then. Because I find that creates stress, and I don't always feel that happy. So I've been trying to focus more on the art of swimming, or the art of making every day count, in different aspects of life, whether it's physical health, being inspired, updating my skill set, my personal projects like my car, or looking at how to steer my career and new goals that I'm setting for myself. So I've been trying to be slightly less goal-oriented, and more about having a very good process. Maybe that's a better way to say it. That's a new thing that I've been working through just this year. You know, the whole chop wood, carry water business?
No,
that whole philosophy.
That? What is that?
I think that might come from the Karate Kid. You know, the saying is before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. In that you focus on making every day count, and it's the art of doing simple tasks, or just taking care of business and projects for the sake of doing a good job of that and having a balanced life. That is the way forward. At least I'm working with this. I'll get back to you to see if this is all a bunch of nonsense or not. But
that reminds me of, I'm not going to do the story justice, but there's an old story about a fisherman who's on a boat, and some rich billionaire comes to go fish with him because whatever, he's on vacation or whatever it is. Do you know what
I've heard this story.
Have you heard this one, Sung?
It's a good one.
And I'm not going to do it justice. But so this billionaire goes fishing with this fisherman's small town, and he's just fishing. And the billionaire's like, oh, well, if you have 3 fishing rods set up, you can catch 3 times as much. And then you can grow your business here to do this, to then catch more fish, to sell more fish, to make more money.
Have employees.
Yeah, have employees. And then the fisherman's like, well, why would I do that? And he's like, well, so then you can retire.
And then you could come back here and, be with your boat and fish as a simple retirement.
He's like, but I'm doing that now. Have you been able to find happiness in that shift from going from being goal-driven to focusing more on the moment?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I've had moments in my life where I've been very much about the goal. When I first started at EA, I think I was very obsessed with getting to a point where I made $100,000 a year. I was just focused on that. And every time I saw my paycheck, I wasn't making $100,000 a year. And then I became very focused. I need to be a C-level executive. And I would present myself like that. When I was at EA, it's very casual. All these programmers with the T-shirt that they've been wearing all week.
That's what C-level stands for? Casual?
No. Like C-suite, like CEO.
Oh. I was like, what?
Casual.
I never
Casual
worked in
executive.
corporate. I was like, what is
an
that?
executive. I would wear like collared shirts, sports jacket. I'm a decision maker. and all of you will think of me as a decision maker. And I went for years just thinking about my not sea level life. And even more recently, I had this goal. I needed to have a supercar. And I've done a lot of projects with McLaren, and they occasionally give me cars to drive, and they're amazing machines. And my daily is a 2019 Cayman S. It's an amazing car, but for the longest time it was a not McLaren, right? So I'm getting in this beautiful, incredibly engineered, well-handling sports car, and I'm driving around my not McLaren, and that's what I mean by external goals. And I'm not appreciating this incredible car that my life has taken me to drive, right? And it's fabulous to be in LA traffic, Canyon, track day, just the best well-rounded machine, good fuel economy, turbo 4-cylinder. And I've been working to get rid of those external checklist items so that you can appreciate the life that you have now. And, you can look at someone that, if we get back to what we were talking about earlier, imagine someone that loves shooting cars, right? They've got their camera, they're going to car meets, they've got friends that have some cool cars, they're getting together to do shoots, but they might still have a day job. And someone might become so focused on the fact that they're not making a living as a professional automotive media creator, that they become miserable. But the point I'm making is that just the moment where you have good friends, just looking at this case study, shooting cars, you're in a position where you have your health and your camera and you're out doing some fun stuff, you should just have fun with that and be able to be in the moment a little bit more. So that's what I'm working through.
I completely understand. The Sienna represents the evolution.
You're gonna make me buy a Sienna soon.
The evolution of me. Right? Because there was a time where I would not ever be seen driving this car. Right? And the reason I love this car so much is because not only does it have 18 cup holders, but 36 miles a gallon. Right?
Not sponsored.
Yeah, it's not. I have no association to Toyota, right? I think they're very especially the minivan department's really happy that I talk about the Sienna because they get no love.
The new Prius, incredible.
It's nice, yeah. But this is like a gift to mankind. But anyway, when I drive this car and when I look at this car, I get so happy, or there's a feeling of contentment because this is a representation of I don't give a fuck what you think about me. And it took so many years to get to that place. And once somehow, and it's actually because of this car, right? I met the mentors. Like when I was in Hawaii, I would see all of these, older gentlemen driving this or a Toyota Tacoma. It's pieces of junk that are being rusted up because of the salt water in Hawaii. And then I would get to know them, and friends would introduce me, and they go, "Yeah, that guy's almost a billionaire, or he owns half of this, or he's this, or he's that." And I'm like, "But he drives a Sienna." He's like, "Yeah, because he doesn't care what people think." And I was like, "Man, that was my North Star." I was like, I need to get to that place where whatever is on the external is not for others. And look, we should love the finer things in life if it's sincere and if it's not for somebody else. Even the way I dressed today, it was when I was younger, it was I dressed because I was like, oh yeah, I need that person to think that I'm something or that I'm cool. And now I wear what I look as I like that. I like the ethos behind that. And the Toyota Sienna, right? The engineers of this car, they created a masterpiece.
Yeah, incredible.
In every way. So there's why fix it when it's not broken, right?
I find myself appreciating Camrys.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I look at the corner of my eye, I see this wide, low sedan. I think, what is that? Oh, it's a Camry.
Is this what I have to look forward to as I get older?
No. I find as I get older, I become more extreme.
Extreme?
Extreme, yeah.
How so?
It's an interesting one as you get older. There's different directions that you can go. I like looking at archetypes. And there's several archetypes that I feel myself heading in the direction of. One is the outlaw. Sometimes I go to Lowrider events in DTLA. I live in the Arts District in downtown LA, and I go to these Lowrider events, and I see I see these older like Mexican gentlemen, you know, with their shaved heads and their tattoos, and I think, damn, they look so amazing, and they're like 60. And then the other archetype that I love is the avant-garde artist or artiste. That people that get older become more out there visually. So I think by the time I'm like 80, I'm going to have like tattoos all over, metal teeth. And,
tattoos?
Yeah. Maybe. I don't have any right now, but I like the idea of them anyway. The becoming more extreme as you get older. I don't know. It's just it's the direction I'm heading in.
Hey, you know, speaking of the lowrider community, I don't know if this urban legend is true, but it has been told that the person that actually sparked or created the lowriders is actually a Japanese American dude.
That's true.
Tazo, I think his name is Tazo or something. It's T something.
I saw this story recently that the first car that's considered the prototype lowrider, there was a Asian American gentleman, but it was the same with. Have you heard of Bob Hirahata?
No.
He worked with in the 1950s. He worked with Sam Barris, and they created the Hirahata Mercury. It's a 51 Mercury. It's the most famous custom car in the world, and Japanese American. This is a whole other subject, but yeah, certainly the stories of Asian Americans in the history of hot rodding, drag racing, custom cars. It's there's so many stories and people that have contributed along the way
that have been invisible, I guess, because the media would be able to control that.
It's a program I did with Hot Wheels 2 years ago and 1 year ago to tell more of these stories during AAPI month.
What did they say?
Well, they came to us and said, hey, let's celebrate AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islanders, and their contributions to the automobile and car culture. So we did several articles that were on Hot Wheels Instagram channel, and we looked at who are the people that have done some crazy stuff, like Larry Shinoda.
I know worked on Larry's story very well.
Yeah, he worked on the Stingray Corvette and the early Mustangs.
The Mustangs, yeah.
But there's numerous people that have designed iconic cars, motorsports legends from within the community. And often these stories are not told. And it's also fun to try and find new people that are coming up to see if we can help them.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that when you talk about Asian Americans and Asian Americans in car culture that I find a little maybe worrying to look at is when I look at Formula D right now, there's not many Asian Americans competing anymore.
Yeah,
and there used to be tons.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
I've talked to Jim Law about this, and Jim
Law used to be the head of FD. Now he works at SEMA, so he's no longer there. Who is of Asian?
He said that it's hard for people to find sponsorship
because they're Asian.
That's one thing he said. Yeah, and I don't know, but it's definitely something we've noted. The challenges.
Yeah, I mean, we had Hurt here.
Yeah.
Right, from, formerly from Hoonigan. And we were asking him, like, how come there are very few pro-African-American drivers?
Yeah.
If any. Like, I never saw any. And then the last FD event I went to, I think there was Dai was still racing. And there was Ken Gucci. And that's it.
They're from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Old school.
But they also were saying, I remember Ken or Dai was telling me, it's like, yeah, we can't compete with, the dudes like
Vaughn
Gittin Jr.
Vaughn. He's like, I can't compete with them because he goes, look at their their pit. Like, it's like it's millions of dollars where he was saying like, I can bear. He had to tow the cars himself, like Ken was saying, right? And like his whole crew are staying in a Motel 6, right? So it's all about sponsorship. So, I mean, I don't know, man. It's like,
it's a challenge. Or you look at women in motorsports, right? Same thing. Well, I think it's at least good that there's dialogue about these things as we're discussing now.
No, you got to talk about it because there's,
and there's still people that break through, thankfully, and there's still marker moments that happen. If we look at, through the lens of people of color and women and their progression in automotive. But I think one has to keep pushing and keep trying to help where you can to find opportunities for people. Keep encouraging others and share what you've learned along the way, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's important to talk about this, but it's also, I think it's important also to not be delusional and,
of course.
Talk about it realistically, right? I mean, you brought up the fact, like, why are there very few Asian, drifters in the pro league? That's a question that I would like to answer, and is it because they're inferior drivers, or is it that because their face does not sell the product? And is that even true? I mean, I deal with that. It's like, I've been, like, when I deal with like corporate, like America, they're like, yeah, your face doesn't work in America. And then I go outside in Asia and Europe, it's like I'm appreciated as like there's value there. But here, being American and growing up here is like, it has its pros and its cons, but I always feel like, I'm in the back seat.
I agree with you. I definitely have experienced that. In my first career music video directing, I was working with industrial metal bands like Marilyn Manson and Nine Inch Nails and this kind of stuff. But I think when I was up for music videos, if I was going to be invited to write on it, and they saw this name, Rod Chong, I don't believe that necessarily helped me in my progression. I think this is in the 90s, but I'd like to think that maybe now it wouldn't be quite as much friction as it was back then.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think it's it's as bad as the 90s. I think it's getting better and better and better. But I think the dialogue and not to complain about it. Like I'm not a soapbox guy, and like I do not like to talk about the world is racist and I'm the victim. Like it's not that. But it's also like can't ignore truth. Like how is drifting this sport that supposedly it was inspired by Japan?
Yeah.
Right, and there's nobody from Japan participating in the sport in America. But Hurt actually brought up a good point when we spoke to him. He said, "What did he say, Emil?" He said that there's the Japanese cars were now where there's this American like sensibility or the American version of Japanese car culture. Right? What did he say?
I think he was talking, if I remember correctly, about the different drifting styles, and what he liked about Final Bout was it had more Japanese influence, where FD today has more American influence of form over function, function over form. Yeah,
definitely. I remember talking to some of the OG Japanese drifters. I went to Japan for a tour in 2008, and we spent a lot of time with Team Orange. And back then they were talking about how the style of drifting that was coming up was more like sideways power sliding, which kind of makes sense. Whereas if you look at those early drifting events where I remember I went to a D1 GP event in 2006 at Irwindale, and they had different rules for cars below 300 horsepower. So the A86s that were drifting back then, they didn't have to drift the bank at Irwindale because they couldn't. They didn't have enough power. And there was a bit more of a playing field that was designed for those low horsepower cars and all that. But that's a bit more the traditional JDM drifting thing, which it's a bit more like Final Bout, I'd say, is more of a throwback to the original spirit of what drifting was like in late 90s, early to mid 2000s, whereas it's kind of gone in a different direction now. Yeah. And I still am a big fan. I try and go to Long Beach and Irwindale every year because I still love drifting.
Yeah. And also, when I step back and look at, the landscape of, professional drifting, Yeah, the positives is that, this thing that came from Asian culture is now accepted and embraced, right, by people that are not Asian. And it's not this this exotic foreign thing. It's like, oh, it's part of American culture now, right? Which is awesome. You know what I mean? Like that. And so it's the
European culture too. The biggest drifting event in the world just happened in Poland. And
really?
I think there were
in Poland?
56,000 people there. It was in a stadium.
How many people?
56,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's moving around the world.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind of become its own thing. Yes, the roots are in Japan. But
why do you think that is? You think it's because it's a car event, or like something that is accessible, right, to just like the layman, right? Like you can drift pretty much anywhere. You don't have to, quarter mile. Like you have to have that quarter mile, and I guess a quarter mile.
Think about skiing and mountains, right? Skiing has been around a long time, and people go on mountains, and it was there for a long time. And then suddenly this new group of people came, snowboarders, right? They dressed differently, listened to different music. Totally, it was a culture. And all the traditional skiers were looking at it going, what is this thing, right? Who are these people? And then that snowboarding has, gone and it's its own thing now. Totally international sport and pastime. And but it still is happening on ski slopes, right? And you could think of traditional motorsports happening on racetracks, et cetera, and then suddenly these drifters come out and they're different, right? It's a lifestyle, more comparable to snowboarders and skaters, I'd say, if you wanted to draw a parallel. And but it's also just fun to watch. And I believe it's the last new motorsport that's happened in an age. I think rallycross was invented in the early 70s. But aside from that, there's not really anything new. Maybe monster trucks are the other new sport, if you want to call it that.
That's trippy to think about, that drifting, or maybe monster trucks, I don't know which came first. But to think that that's one of the newer forms, and maybe the last form of motorsport racing.
And it's entertaining, right? You've got the crazy out of control action that you might see in rallying. You've got the side by side door banging you might get in NASCAR.
Yeah.
The smoke, pomp, and circumstance you get in drag racing. Big power cars, and but then you've got this knockout timeline. Whereas regular motorsports, right, you're going around in circles and you get to sit in the grandstand as a fan and vroom, 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 right? The cars are going left, right, and then someone wins, and then it's over. And it's usually not that exciting as much as I love motorsports. So I think that's why drifting has developed in the way that it has. There was a while there in the U.S. that rallycross came in and took all the oxygen out of the room, and all the factory programs left Formula D, went to rallycross. And then there's new forms of electric rallycross coming in, et cetera. But it's stayed that off, and it keeps going. The fan engagement's there. Maybe there's not as many factory programs anymore, but still fun. We love drifting. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Rod.